Okay, it looks like we have 4 o'clock. A big thank you to everybody for taking time to tune in again. Just a housekeeping item to begin with. We do plan to continue to have this meeting next Thursday and likely the following Thursday. What we would anticipate for future meetings is that we'll likely have a more compressed agenda. So instead of, we've been running about an hour in our meetings, we'll likely target maybe a half an hour or so for future meetings. So again, thanks to everybody for your participation. In our last 2 meetings, we have had a couple of mental health professionals participate with us, and I really appreciated having them as part of the town hall meeting. I think we have all experienced the different aspects from the medical community and the business community, but something that probably isn't, in my opinion, being talked about enough is the importance of being focused on mental health as we're all going through an extremely stressful time. I think many of us are probably feeling a little bit nervous, a little bit uneasy, and it's good to know that those things are very normal, and would encourage you to take the time to talk to clergy, family, friends, or even some type of professional to help you work through any of those issues. So I've really appreciated their input the last couple of meetings. We don't have any mental health professionals on the meeting today, but did just want to remind everybody to continue to look for the positive. I think that was one of my big takeaways. So what I've tried to do in the last week is look for positive things that have happened within our community. And it's really fun to think back just through the last week what we've seen. Last Friday night, the Sun Theater did a great promotion. They had a virtual concert to say, or a concert that complied with physical distancing, as Mayor Hudson would say. They had a performer travel around to different locations within the community. Community members practiced good physical distancing, and it was a great way to have a social event as a community. I think that's just a great example of how we can modify little things to still continue to have positive experiences together. Other positive things that happened for our business community, we saw the PPP program get funded and reopened again. The PPP program, we talked a little bit about that maybe 3 weeks ago. That's a payroll protection program. And for many of our businesses, that's provided critical funding to help support their businesses through a really tough transitional time. The most recent round, we're seeing a lot of those funds allocated towards smaller businesses. So a lot of businesses that maybe just have one employee or that are just self-employed. And it's been really good to see the participation rate of the local banks in that. In fact, Nebraska bankers are among the leading participants in funding those loans all across the nation. It's really neat. They allocated a certain amount of funds for smaller banks, like basically all the banks in Nebraska. The Nebraska banks and the smaller banks have gone through 100% of the funding that was originally earmarked for us, and we're now working on utilizing funds that may have been allocated to the bigger banks. So a real testament to the financial professionals, not only within our community, but really across the whole state. Other positive things that I've seen in the last week, as you drive around town, I know that's something that our family's done from time to time just to get out of the house. You see yard signs, and a lot of the yard signs are celebrating the seniors and celebrating the academic achievements of students within our community. And the teaching staff is continuing to recognize students that continue to remain committed to their education. So it's really fun to see how people are evolving and really finding appropriate ways to express gratitude to one another. And probably the last thing that I've been the most grateful for is finally a change in the weather. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. We're going to see, I believe, maybe close to a 90-degree day. A lot of the farmers are getting seeds planted. It's really fun to see spring finally start to show up. I know just part of my unease has been, it didn't really feel like spring. It didn't feel like April for many weeks. And now we're starting to really feel like spring. And I thank Mayor Hudson for acknowledging that with her background today. Really appreciate that. And that's a great reminder of the spring that's really on the horizon. So with that, we'll jump into the agenda. I don't see Kate with us yet. I think she may be in queue, or she may be joining us very quickly. But while we're waiting for Two Rivers to join, we're going to go ahead and go to Dr. Dalrymple. I do see Dr. Dalrymple was with us. No Luke today?
Yeah, he's here. He's, where is he? I don't know if you can see him.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, hello, everyone says hello to Luke. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate you taking some time to be with all of us today. We do have some questions, and I guess as a reminder to everybody who has participated in these before, please submit any questions you may have to Deb at the chamber, and we'll get Deb's email address up in the comments section here shortly. So as we're going through the agenda today, if you do have questions, please feel free to submit those. So Anna, we'll start with some questions for you. So last week you mentioned signing up for Test Nebraska. I signed up yesterday. Have you seen any communications or anything as a result of testing or as a result of signing up for that? What can I expect now that I've signed up?
Yeah, you know, I personally have not seen anything yet. And my understanding right now is that they're still collecting that data. I believe they've had a lot of people sign up, which is great. And I think that's giving them an idea of the testing needs that are still out there in the state. My understanding is the governor said yesterday they're trying to get closer to that 3,000 tests a day. So I think if we can do that, that's the goal. But I've not heard anything yet.
Yep. Okay. Great. Hey, I've seen even as recently as yesterday some headlines about new drugs that might be on the horizon or potential treatments. Any thoughts or comments on what we've maybe seen in the news media in the last week?
Yeah, so yesterday they released some preliminary information about a study about a drug called remdesivir, and it's an antiviral medication. And there was a lot of promise, or there seems to be a lot of promise. So the data at least shows that it decreases hospital or illness by 4 days on average, and there was a decrease in number of deaths. My understanding of the data was it wasn't a statistically significant number of decrease in terms of death, but it was in terms of decreased illness length. So there's definitely promise. It's only one study. If you're familiar at all with how drugs are studied, that's not very many. So there still needs to definitely be more studies. And there actually, I shouldn't say that there haven't been other studies. There was another study that was done in China, I believe, that did not show that kind of promise. So there's definitely more information that needs to be procured about this drug, but it is showing some promise, and I think that's definitely a good thing. So more to come on that for sure.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. It's any progress is good progress. So yeah, we'll stay tuned on that. Kind of along those lines, what if I was to maybe mix a bleach cocktail or try to inject myself with some Lysol or something along those lines? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, don't do that.
Oh, okay, good. I thought that might be the answer, but
yeah, that's not a good idea. So, I mean, I think that's pretty much, I hope that's not something I have to tell anybody, but just to be clear, don't do that. That would cause pretty significant injury. So I wish it was that easy, but certainly use them to clean around your house. That's a good thing, but don't put them in or on your body, please.
Sounds good. So as we're on kind of some of those wellness or best practices, what are some good ideas? I know we've talked about that some in the past, but what should I be doing to protect myself?
Yeah, still wearing a mask out in public. Please continue to do that. I know how you feel about masks, so you can continue to wear that mask. So, we know that helps spread illness, and especially if you maybe are an asymptomatic carrier. So continue to wear a mask out in public. Still social distancing, try to avoid any unnecessary gatherings, if at all possible, really, and minimize going places, non-essential travel. It's getting tough. I get it. It's been a long time already, and it gets old, but, try to continue that. Even now in our county, we've got a lot of cases. So, that's still really important for us. So, trying to think what else I can tell you. Things we've talked about: social distancing and wearing a mask, and staying clean, keeping surfaces clean is good too. So,
Anna, I know one thing that I'm probably guilty of is I think back my behavior in the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, I probably had some red chapped hands, and I don't as much today, and that's probably not because I've built up an immunity to soap or hand sanitizer. I've probably gotten a little lazy on that. I need to get back to getting into a better routine of making sure I'm washing my hands for the full 20 seconds.
Yep, that would be good for sure. Thank you. Yes, washing hands is definitely not off the table yet. So we should
Yep,
probably be doing that anyway, but especially now is still good to do that. Yes.
sounds good. Awesome. Um, what should I do if I'm starting to feel like I may have some symptoms that have been associated with COVID?
So let's go through those symptoms too. I think that's a good thing to kind of review. So initially, when we first started talking about this, it was cough and a fever and chest tightness, but that's kind of evolved. Those are certainly symptoms that can be that are associated with COVID-19. A lot of things that we're also seeing though, so a loss of sense of taste and sense of smell is another interesting, pretty unique one to this virus that we actually are seeing quite a bit. And then fever, of course. Sore throat has been associated, and then some symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea or GI symptoms. So those are kind of newer symptoms that are also associated in addition to the traditional fever, cough, and shortness of breath or chest tightness. So if you're potentially experiencing any of those, if you're not at home, go home. Don't go to work. And then I would advise you to call your local hospital, call us up here at Gothenburg Health, get an appointment on our designated sick side and get a test done. So testing has definitely opened up in the sense that we have been directed by the state health department to test quote unquote aggressively, which I'm glad that we're starting to do that. So any symptoms, I would encourage people to call to get a test. And then we can advise you in terms of how long to stay at home and how long to self-isolate or self-quarantine.
Awesome. Great. Really appreciate that. One of the things I'm fascinated with is technology and how we've really evolved of late. And it's really exciting for me to think about being able to use something like telehealth, even with a familiar face. I'd say prior to this, I always thought of that maybe being a stranger in some far off Never land. Can you tell me a little bit about Gothenburg's version of telehealth?
Yeah, so we're offering telehealth. And so, yes, you can absolutely get a visit with one of your providers or a provider. And so you just call and say that you'd like to schedule a virtual visit, and they make sure you have the right equipment, whether it's a computer or a smartphone or something. It just has to have some audio and visual equipment, and they'll get that set up for you. They'll help you do that over the phone. And then at that scheduled time, we meet with you. And I think it's gone really well with the patients that I've done it with. And I think it's a great resource for anything from quick follow-ups to being able to talk with patients who might be at higher risk that we want to try to keep them at home. And then maybe patients who themselves are high risk for coming into the facility. So we're trying to keep our staff safe. So it's definitely a great option, and I would encourage people to use it.
Great. Well, in trying to look for the good, like we talked about earlier in the meeting, that's been a good thing for me to think about, the ability to potentially work with someone I know on a medical issue utilizing telehealth. Even with a busy schedule, there's probably a lot of potential benefits to that new technology. Great. Thank you, Anna. I really appreciate it. Okay, now we've got Katie from Two Rivers that has joined us. Thanks, Katie, for taking time to be with us. Oh, there we go.
Okay, sorry, I just unmuted myself. Apparently I can't work Zoom today, but I'm here.
That's all right. We're glad you could join us. A few questions for you. I think 2 weeks ago, we talked about the National Guard was dispatched to help with testing in Lexington. And then I had heard that possibly this week they were in Cozad helping with testing.
Yep,
Can
sorry,
you
I'm
tell us
back.
a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we did some testing in both Cozad and Gibbon on Wednesday, this Wednesday. I think there was about 100 tests done at each site. I'm not entirely sure the number. Those tests were still prioritized for first responders, healthcare workers, those sorts of people. And it sounds like it's getting better for us. It's still kind of a rocky path we're treading with this testing. And we're going to continue. We plan on doing 600 tests in Lexington this weekend. So
Yep.
that should be available too.
Great. And how long will it be until you're able to release numbers as a result of any test? Or what's the time from swab to the patient knowing, and then
Right.
those numbers being released to the community?
So they've created a system now. Initially, we had those people, the victims, we can call them, because those swabs are not pleasant. I'm sure Mick and Anna can attest to that. But they, the victims, the more information we had on their paperwork, the better we could do. And then, like any form, handwriting was an issue, and then people choosing to fill out the parts of the form they wanted to and not completely fill out the form also created some issues for us. So we really, really want to be sure that if you want your test results quickly, we need your phone number, your address, all of that vital information. We can't contact you if we don't know where or what your phone number is. And we've been working through that problem. They give you like a tablet now with survey software on it where you fill out a form, and it's been going smoother given the volume of the tests. It's taking us a little longer to get back to you than we would want to, but we're working through.
Great. Well, good pointers for anybody that might find themselves in that testing situation. And I'm not sure I've really heard the person being tested referred to as a victim, but as I understand the test more and more, that probably is an accurate description. So that's entertaining. Okay. There's been some questions on where we're at as far as on our trajectory. Would you anticipate that we're still on an upswing within our county, or do you think we've peaked and will likely be starting to recess?
We're still looking at the peak. I was just looking at predicted numbers for deaths in Nebraska for a different presentation, and it looks like they're predicting anywhere between 250 total deaths to 750 total deaths in Nebraska by June. Right now we're at 55 or 68, 68 deaths. So that's a pretty long way to go, and the models are affected by how much social distancing we continue to complete and how we address the situation, and that'll definitely show what the death rate with the death rate after this. From what I know, though, no matter what we do, we still are going to have deaths in our state.
And one of the things that I try to remind myself as I start to hear about other parts of the country, maybe on the coast, that are starting to reopen a little bit now, those places were going through an apex and a peak significantly ahead of when we're now just getting into that. Several weeks. We're several weeks behind many of those places. So is it reasonable to think that as we start to see other places in our country start to relax some of the measures and guidances that are in place, that we will likely be behind that because the bug was slower to get to us?
Yes, I would agree with that completely. And we are, because of the nature of the beast in Dawson County, we're probably going to even be a little bit behind the rest of Nebraska in opening up measures as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's just good for all of us to keep in mind. I know as I'm entering into a task, if I have a good idea of the longevity of it, I can better prepare for what we're really into. And I'm optimistic, and it's fun to think about when we get back to whatever normal is going to look like again. But yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is we're probably going to be in this holding pattern for a little while, and a bit longer than many other parts of the country, and maybe even many other parts of the state.
Yep, that's true.
Okay, great. There's been some guidance released just within the last week about churches and church services. And I think that's statewide guidance that goes into effect on May 4th. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then even how that may be implemented in Dawson County just a little bit more differently?
Right. And so that guidance is actually statewide. There's two two bits of guidance that are consistent across all 19 health districts, and that is that they're reopening elective surgeries in acute care facilities, and they are allowing places of worship to reopen with certain circumstances in place for both types of facilities. For churches, they are asking that family groups sit 6 feet apart, that there's no passing of anything between family groups, there's no congregating anywhere besides in the sanctuary in the area of the church. And there's a few other stipulations that are slipping my mind. I believe in general, it's as little contact with other members of your church as possible. So that's the statewide mandate. And then other measures will be implemented between health districts at specific times for each district.
Yep. So more information and more guidance to come. I know we've got Pastor Jamie participating in the call today, and we'll talk to her about that same topic also. So they're really good to know, and it is really real, and it's really tough to think about not having that camaraderie in a physical way like we're accustomed to. But I believe many of those gathering opportunities can still happen in a virtual way. So more information to come on that, but that was kind of exciting to think about. Another big question that we've received is, what about restaurant lobbies and hair salons and dentist office? I look at myself and yeah, I'm a little past due. I'm ready for a haircut and probably need a good tooth cleaning too. So any insights there?
Right. So dental offices do fall under the guidelines for elective surgeries. They are able to reopen on May 4th as well. I don't hold out hope for hair salons and restaurants. It looks like those are actually going to be extended past the 11th per these measures. And we've been anxiously awaiting for the governor to release these directed health measures for about 10 days so that we could, 10 days, because we're really wanting to provide you that information very well and be sure that it's the correct information.
Good. And I know as you're able to provide that to us, Deb does a really good job getting that out in that chamber update. So for anybody that's not currently signed up for that, if that's information or data you're interested in getting just as quickly as possible, please make sure you email Deb and get on that distribution list. So another question that's come in, we did talk, Katie, a little bit about the potential death rates that we could be seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any data for us on what the recovery rates have been in Dawson County?
We don't. We're having a hard time capturing that. Partly because recovery is different lengths of time for every individual. So you can't just check back in 2 weeks and assume that they're better. And so we're kind of capturing as we go. Many people are symptomatic when we're talking to them still and still sick. And then so we're going to have to follow up with these individuals and make sure they are healing. We've had several that are sick for 1 day or asymptomatic, and we've had several that are sick for a month and it takes them a while to heal. So we're kind of seeing a variation of recovery time overall, and and unless we follow back up, we won't completely capture that data.
Yep. And as we learned last week on the call, there's probably many people that are asymptomatic and walking around that have COVID, but are just unaware of it. And to Dr. Dalrymple's comments earlier, that really does illuminate the importance of wearing masks when you're out in public, that you yourself could be a carrier of the virus, but just not displaying symptoms. So yeah, appreciate that. Well, thank you for taking time, Katie. And I know that the phone was ringing even as we were on the call, but we appreciate you taking some time for us here in Gothenburg. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we've got some questions for Mick. Mick, again, thanks for taking time to be with us. I've heard, maybe through the grapevine, that there's been some exposure or some positive tests within the hospital. Is that accurate, or can you share anything with us in regard to that topic?
Yeah, Nate, we have had some positive tests, and unfortunately it's something that we expected. something that we're taking very, very seriously. And, we're actively investigating and working with Two Rivers on mitigating any future risk. It looks like the cases that we've had have been community acquired and not acquired through patient care activities. So we're pretty excited about that. Yeah, like I say, we're taking it very seriously and trying to really do a full trace and make sure that we prevent any potential harm to patients.
Absolutely. And what I'm really excited about is that the hospitals really had weeks to prepare for this. There may have been other parts of the country that were really thrown into it with less time for preparation. But if I understand things correctly, you guys had the game plan, you were ready for this, you knew it would happen, and you're executing on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, none of the confirmed positives are direct caregivers. They are all, staff that work behind the scenes. So really haven't had an opportunity for direct care. That's why we're confident that it didn't come from, caring for patients or any lack of PPE or anything like that, that they were truly community acquired, don't know where, don't know how, but somewhere out in the community.
Yeah. And it just reiterates the importance for continuing for all of us to take the precautions that we know we need to, then how that can impact a lot of people within the community.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Mick. A question, thinking about down the road, maybe as we get into late fall, early winter, I've heard some conversations within the last week about what do you think influenza season will look like as we transition into that season?
Gosh, I wish we could predict that better. Every year there's a team of scientists somewhere that work really hard to try to predict what the strain of flu is going to be that comes around. And sometimes the flu shots are very effective and sometimes they're not as effective. I hope that this year, flu's kind of going to be with us forever, but I hope that this year they're very effective, because if we're still fighting COVID-19 at the same time as flu season, it's just going to make it that much harder. So keep our fingers crossed that the flu, that they guess it right, and we have a successful vaccination this year, and we can reduce our flu cases next year.
Yeah, and in many ways, just like we've had the benefit of having a little bit of extra time to prepare locally compared to maybe on the coast, with flu season on the horizon, I'm guessing I'm not the only one thinking about that. The medical community at large is actively preparing for what that could look like.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Great. Good. Well, thank you, Mick. Appreciate you taking some time to share some insights with us. So
Thanks.
Next, we're going to jump over to Becky Jobman, also with the hospital. Becky has been working on kind of a fun project, and the fun project is the face mask. And I think it started out as a project to make sure that all of the hospital staff members had access to masks, and maybe has grown and expanded beyond that.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Nate. So we initially kind of tasked the community with helping us come up with 500 masks, and we knew that would be a bit excess of what we needed, but we really wanted to be able to equip all of our employees with a mask and save those medical masks for our providers and clinicians. And so, yeah, we've actually got, let's see here, I just got a text update on this, 535 masks. And so we've had enough that we've been able to work with businesses in the community to also equip them with masks, which has been just a great way to help serve the community.
Great. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Becky. And actually just had a question get submitted, and it's probably a Becky question, or more likely a Mick question. The question was, how is the hospital on PPE? Are they good or in need of more? And I could pretend I knew what PPE is, but why don't you explain that to us?
Nate, PPE stands for personal protective equipment. So that's face masks, gowns, gloves, things like that. We have an incredible supply chain team. They have stayed on top of this from the very beginning, and we're solid. In fact, we've had enough resources that we've been able to donate some to some of the other entities in town. I know that we've shared some of our PPE with with Hilltop. I know we've shared some with the EMS crews, and we continue to be, you know, kind of doing really well with that compared to a lot of hospitals in the country. And you know, part of that is just really our lack of cases. We may have a couple of barely symptomatic people that are in the, you know, that are hospital employees, and I think that's just a factor of being the largest employer in town and having a lot of people around. But we've not treated any COVID patients, no inpatient treatments or anything like that. And when you treat those patients, that's when you really need those PPE measures, because every time you walk in the room with them, you have to gown up and face mask and all of that. So we've been fortunate in not having to burn through our PPE, but we've also been very diligent about continuing to buy it in anticipation of needing it. So, you know, when this is all over, and remember I say when, not if, when this is all over, we're probably gonna have lots of extra PPE, but that's okay. We're in a good place right now, and that's a good place to be.
Great. And as we've said throughout this whole process, we will never know if we've over-prepared, but we will know very quickly if we've under-prepared. So a big thank you to you and the staff for putting us in a position to be prepared and even share resources. So yeah, thank you. With that, gonna transition to Dr. Rhodes with the school. Dr. Rhodes, it's been fun. I've heard from many parents in the community how much they appreciate our teachers. I think a lot of parents that are trying to play both the role of teacher and mom and dad and continuing to be productive at work are really understanding the demands of what it takes to be a teacher. Can you share with us some of the resources that could be available to help parents that are feeling a little underprepared for teaching in the living room?
Sure. Thanks, Nate. We have several recommendations that I think could make life much smoother at home for our families and our children. Number one is having a routine, having a set schedule that is pretty routine from day to day. One of the things that educators know is that most of our kids thrive with structure and having that schedule. And so we really encourage parents, and we have through conversations that we've had via email, and our teachers are having to set that daily schedule and try and keep that intact. We believe that that not only helps the student, but helps the parents as well. The other thing that we would remind our parents is that remote learning is not an 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Situation. And so the nice thing about remote learning is that there is some flexibility on how parents can schedule their day with their kids. And we really encourage our parents to build in break times, to build in outdoor time, to build in those times where maybe they can do some of their work from home as well. And so we believe there's a lot of flexibility within the schedule. The other recommendation that we would give our parents is to have a dedicated space. Again, I think that helps with routine as well. Now that may be in the family room, it may be at the kitchen table, but we know that kids work better in that continuous environment that they're in. So we don't recommend differentiating that from day to day. We want our kids to get used to that is their learning space. And so a component of that learning space is to make sure that all the materials are available. Materials that our teachers have provided, whether it's packets, make sure the Chromebook is plugged in, it's charged, it's ready to go, and any other materials that our students need. We absolutely appreciate our parents taking on the task of helping us educate their kids as well, and we know that it's unlike anything we've ever experienced. The resource I would say that I would continue to encourage our parents to utilize is their children's teachers. They could provide extra enrichments to help with some of the units of study that maybe the student is struggling with. Building principals are always available. I receive communication via email on a daily basis from parents that have maybe some roadblocks ahead. We make sure we forward those on to the correct individual within our system to help out any way that we can.
Great. Well, a lot of those are fairly simple pointers, but I feel a lot more empowered just knowing, have a routine, have a set aside workspace. Reach out if you're struggling, talk to the teachers, get some pointers from them, break up the day, get them outside some. Those seem very simple, but very, very helpful to those of us that are not accustomed to being the primary educator in the family. So thank you. Another question would pertain to graduation. Our normal graduation date was May 10th. So we're basically 11 days away from that. I know last week you gave us a little bit of an update on graduation. Any additional insights or thoughts?
Well, again, we have set a date for what we hope to be more of a traditional graduation, and that'll be August 1st. That is a Saturday, and we moved it to an evening with the idea that we could put multiple plans into place, and based on what the current DHMs are at that time, we'd be able to fulfill compliance with those DHMs. Whether that might be outside on the football field, for instance, if we can't have a more traditional inside the gymnasium. We have been asked several times, do we plan on doing anything during what would be the normal commencement that was set a year ago in terms of our calendar, and that was May 10th at 2 p.m. On Mother's Day. And right now we are trying to put together our senior video, and the hope would be that we would be able to stream that out at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the May 10th. We've talked about some other options as well. One of the things we've tried to be very conscientious about is not putting our students and families in the position of being in a large gathering. And so there's been some talk about parades and things of that nature. And as you know, we did do a very early parade, a teacher parade, but we certainly don't want to put the possibility out there for kids to be able to be in a large group. And we know that to some degree, kids are somewhat bulletproof. And so we just don't want to put them at harm's way, nor do we want to put our families at harm's way. But we are trying to figure out from a virtual standpoint how we can do something on May 10th.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the update. And speaking of the calendar, it is hard to believe that, yeah, we're April 30th. Tomorrow's May Day, which May I always associate with the end of the school year. And it's hard to think that that's rapidly approaching. One of the things that I think is a question for many people within our community as it would pertain to the last day of school is the school lunch program that many, many people have been seeing the benefits of. Can you give us any thoughts as far as the last day of school and how that will tie to the school lunch program?
That's a great question, Nate. We recently applied for summer reimbursement through the month of June. It's a new federal program that is related to the coronavirus. We did end up receiving that waiver. So we are in the midst of planning on what those lunches will look like. What we've been approved to provide is lunches through June 30th. And so we're going to look at a little bit different type of application and sign up. It's completely free. The school district will be reimbursed. So we will be providing more information as we get into that first week of May, next week and the following week. But we want a little bit better idea of if we're looking at the same numbers in terms of being able to provide those lunches. But we were very excited that our application was approved by the federal government in terms of being able to allow those meals through June 30th.
Great. And speaking of tools that families could really benefit from to help educate their kids, if participating in the lunch program frees up a little bit of time for mom and dad to play teacher, boy, we want to encourage people to sign up for that service. That's not necessarily income based, or there's no stigma attached to that. that's a thank you from the school for acknowledging mom and dad are putting on the teacher hat and really helping administer education from home. So we would encourage people, and if they want to sign up for that, if they haven't yet, how would they go about doing that?
Again, we will publish a new application, a new survey. We will use our local media for that, both the Leader and the Telegraph, and then we'll have hard copies here at Gothenburg Public Schools as well as on our website as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Rhodes. Really appreciate the update from the school. With that, we're going to go to Sean Kashke, our UNL Extension Educator. So thanks for taking time to be with us, Sean. Last time you were here, you shared some statistics about the census. Do you have any census updates for Gothenburg or for Dawson County?
Well, I do, Nate, and thanks for your questions and having me on here today again. There are several state and federal assistance programs that support key community businesses and services from the university. Will's going to post those there in the chat box in case you're specifically interested in those. If you do have questions about those, please contact your local extension office for any specific questions on those resources. But back to the census, the Nebraska statewide average is 62%, which is third in the nation. We're pretty good. Nebraska is usually one of the best in the nation on volunteer hours and voting, so we're keeping up those good numbers. And Dawson County, this is just updated today, is at 55%, which is 42nd of our 93 counties. So that's up three spots from the last week. So that's good. The city of Gothenburg is much higher at 69.3%, which is 21 out of the 198 cities reporting in Nebraska. Lex is at 50%, Koza is at 63%, and that's from my, again, the most recent real-time census response tracking system, which you can go online and find. My statistician friend, David Draws at the UNO Center for Public Affairs Research, said to give Gothenburg big kudos because you're inching closer to your 2010 completion rate of 77%. Again, you're already at almost 70. He suggested that you all keep promoting it. Waverly is the current state leader at 74%, so you're only 4% behind the state leader, that other I-80 community of Waverly, in your same class. So he said, thank you guys for all your help promoting it. And again, just a reminder, the census is really important. About $20,000 per person comes back in federal funding to the local communities based on those census numbers. So your vote matters, your vote counts. Nate, if I could shift over to the business side of things real quick. You and Deb, you early on in these programs have done a really nice job bringing on some state officials, especially regarding the CARES Act benefit. And I know just after me in a few minutes here, Sean Sabin's going to talk a little bit more about specific business revenue tips that he's learned after going through this process. I am happy to report that with the original CARES Act, that ag producers were not eligible with that EIDL economic injury disaster loan program, and they have changed that this past week. So even ag businesses with fewer than 500 employees and sole proprietors with or without employees may apply, and you should see your local lender about specific regulations regarding that. So again, thanks, Nate. Thanks for your time here today, and wish you all well.
Great, thank you. And if I understood correctly, I don't think the EIDL or the IDEAL portal is open at this point in time. They've funded the program, and
Right.
There's funds waiting there, but I believe the SBA is still working on processing the first round of applications, and we're anxiously awaiting that portal opening again. So more to come on that topic, I would
Right.
say. Yep. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Okay, gonna jump over to Mayor Hudson and Gary Greer, our city administrator. Mayor Hudson, as you heard Sean talk about our current census, what do you have to say to Gothenburg about what do you think our potential is?
Well, I think he gave us a challenge. We're really close to Waverly. We just as well beat them. Just need to get online and do it. I think if you're in the older generation and struggle a little bit with technology, it's a great time to call one of your kids or your grandkids, and they'll walk you through it in a heartbeat. So do a little social distancing and get a hold of someone that knows something and get your census filled out. 4% is pretty easy to beat.
I think we can do it. I think we're up for the challenge. Thank you. What about another thing that's going to be just around the corner, but is critically important, is the election. Can you give us any updates on the upcoming election?
I really don't have too much, except that they are, at my understanding at this point, we have no one to man the sites in 2 weeks. So if anyone has time and is interested, they need to get a hold of Matt Williams, or get a hold of the county clerk. There would be training on the 11th, and then you would staff the site all day on the 12th. But we do need to have the site open. Hopefully people have used the mail-in ballots for the majority of it. But if you have some time and willing to do it, please get a hold of the county or Matt Williams. And I think you indicated that they will provide all the necessary protection gear and stuff to man it for the day.
Yep, sounds good. And you mentioned the early ballots. I believe we have 1 day left. You have to get those submitted to the county clerk's office or to Carla's office at the county
End of tomorrow.
by
Yes.
tomorrow. And she'll accept an email or a fax, I believe.
Yes.
I think get on the website, and I know Deb's done a good job circulating that form through the chamber updates, but we are rapidly approaching the deadline for that. So good. Gary, what kind of update do you have from the city as far as even day-to-day operations?
Well, I wish I had more news, but one thing I want to do is thanks to everybody who participates in this. I know there's a lot of good people working hard to make sure everybody's knows what's going on in the community, and that's really important, and I'm really impressed with it. But thanks a lot for what you do. City Hall is still closed. We are in close contact with the governor's office, and we're following directed health measures to the T, and we'll continue to do that. I'm going to tell you a few things that are going on just to let you know, but I will tell you we'll reevaluate May 15th, and we'll find out if we want to change anything or continue on the same path. But as I said, City Hall is closed. All meetings that we're having are virtual at this point in time, or we're not having meetings. The staff is on intermittent schedules, and that's basically we've split them in half. So the whole staff isn't around each other at the same time to make sure that we don't lose our whole staff at one point in time. So we've been using that, and we've been doing, it's been very busy. It's amazing when people are home, they find projects and they want to update their houses and do things like that. So we've been doing a lot of things, and we've been doing those projects that maybe have been sitting there, but they haven't been priority. So we've been doing a lot of those lately, and you might see us out running around doing that. The campground is closed, and we'll reevaluate that on the 15th, but it looks like, you know, this year's going to be fairly sporadic for our campground, but we'll keep you in knowledge on that. We are preparing to open the pool, but let's not get too excited yet, because I'm really not sure if we're going to be able to open the pool this year, because it's going to be very difficult to do physical distancing. But we're preparing the pool in case, and once we get some direction from the state and some other organizations, we will see if that's appropriate to open or not. But just in case, we're getting ready. And before, I think we talked a little bit about working the polling places, and I will tell you that's the most important thing we can do right now, is have someone volunteer to make sure that we are able to do what we're free to do in this country. And I would encourage anyone to go ahead and take the training on the 17th and work the polls, because it's vitally important, and it would be just a real heroic thing to do this year. So with that, thank you, and I'll answer any questions if you need to.
Yep, thank you, Gary. So yeah, just a good reminder to everybody, on May 12th, Tuesday, is the election. The training for the election for the election workers is on May 11th. So if you're able to, we would love to have you help, and we are looking for volunteers. I think the people that would tune into a meeting like this would be of the perfect demographic to where we could find some helpers willing to participate in that. So would really encourage volunteerism there. Going to transition to Colton. Colton, can you give us an update on what's going on in the world of early childhood?
Sure, thanks, Nate. I just want to put out yesterday, GECLC held in concert with Flatwater Bank a program called Navigating Financial Stress in a Pandemic. It was a Zoom call. We had a good response, but But for those of you who weren't able to participate, or you know somebody who wasn't able to participate, if you go to geclc.org, you can follow the link and watch that webinar, a recording of the webinar, and also find some additional resources. So again, we have some uncertainty surrounding these times, I think, from a family budget standpoint. And so you can go on there and get a spending plan worksheet, a spending plan tracker, and things like that. So really valuable resource, I think, for all of our families, like I said, in this time of uncertainty. Now, as you're on that website too, I'll also promote this. Nate and Dr. Rhodes, you guys hit on the role that parents are playing as educators for their children. So folks, if you're maybe running out of ideas, especially for those kids that are not school aged, go to geclc.org. We have a lot of resources for activities that you can go through with your kids. They're educational activities, and they're fun. I know my family's use some of those as well. The last thing I want to hit on, and I know Nicole hit on it last week, is GECLC's Community Partner Initiative. So I think this whole process has been a good reminder for all of us that the important role that early childhood and child care really plays in all of our daily lives as we go to work and whatnot. So at any given time, when we are fully operational in Gothenburg, if we're at capacity, we know we have about 70 kids in our community that just don't have a spot in childcare. And so part of GECLC's mission is to find a solution to access to quality and affordable early childhood care. So with the downturn in the city, the school, and the hospital have been great supporters of our early childhood efforts here in the community. But what we're needing to do is really solidify and formalize those relationships with our business community and other members of our community that are wanting to step in and take on the fight together with us. So if you go to geclc.org, you can look for that community partners piece. Help sponsor us a little bit to help find the solution to early childhood within the community. We have some really cool things coming down the pipeline that here within the next few months we're going to be happy to roll out. So thanks, Nate.
Great. Appreciate that, Colton. Thank you, and thanks for all you're doing to help the community. Next, want to transition to Sean Sabin. Sean has been a past vice president of our chamber board and is currently immediate past president of the ambassadors, volunteered countless hours to our community. So we've asked Sean to participate with us today as kind of a proxy or a representative of what some of the businesses are doing within our community to continue to serve their customers. So Sean, what changes have you made to your operation to continue to be able to function in the environment we're in today?
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, can you hear me okay? Perfect. So some of the changes that we've had to make is we've closed our lobby down, which is very hard to do in the automotive industry. A lot of people need to come in to have their cars inspected, to get estimates on the collision side. But we've closed our lobby down not only to the public, but also to vendors that are coming in. All the vendors are stuck outside delivering the product, not coming indoors. All of our technicians right now are picking up and delivering as many vehicles as possible. We have lots of customers out of the Cozad area, so we're even traveling as far as Cozad to pick up and deliver vehicles to people. All of our technicians are wearing gloves right now. They're using alcohol-based sanitizers. We have about three sanitizations per vehicle, once when we very first get it, once while we're working on it, and once before we ever deliver it. That we're sanitizing the vehicles in the spots that we're touching or that customers would have touched. And we're just taking as many steps as we can based on CDC guidelines to be able to make sure that our staff is safe and that the customers who are continuing to do business with us are safe. Some of those measures that we're taking, we're averaging about an extra 20 minutes per vehicle worth of time that we spend on that vehicle as opposed to what we were before. So that's every technician. Just on the mechanic side, for instance, we have 3 bays and 3 technicians going all the time, averaging an additional 20 minutes per vehicle worth of time spent just to try to be safe as we can.
Yep. And so what have you seen really the impact to your business as a result of some of these changes?
So as I mentioned, you know, when I say spending 20 minutes per vehicle, to people who aren't familiar with the automotive industry, that might not seem like a lot of time. But what that accounts to for us per technician per bay is we're losing 3 to 4 hours worth of production each day in delivering vehicles and sanitizing vehicles. And in the automotive industry, we're billing on our time. And, you know, that's not time I feel like we can pass on to the customers. You know, we can't charge for that time. So when we start to lose 3 to 4 hours worth of production, billable production per day, as well as you see a drop in car count and stuff coming through for our business, that can begin to take quite the hit.
Yep. Well, that's a good segue. What can our community be doing to help small businesses, would you say?
I think the biggest thing that they can do is continue to support them, even the businesses, especially the businesses that have been forced to completely close. There are ways to definitely continue to support those businesses and to be able to buy gift cards and whatnot. And I think I'll just use an example for myself and my wife. My wife's a nurse, and obviously I'm still operating in my business, so we're able to continue to collect a paycheck. So we took all the stimulus money that we received, and we went out and we dumped that back into the community. We went out and bought gift cards at every hair salon. We went to every single restaurant, all the businesses that are closed, Charm, everything that we could think of, and we tried to just pour that money back into the community because we're still receiving paychecks, and it's that stimulus money was kind of a bonus for us, which I know that everybody's not in that situation, and there are people that need that money just to simply survive. But I would say especially the people that are still working, contact the businesses that are closed. You can reach them through Facebook. You can still call and get them. Go out and buy some gift cards. Help those people plan to reopen and to be able to keep their doors open. The last thing that we want to see as a small community is small businesses have to close their doors because it's going to hurt the economy. It's going to hurt what we have here in Gothenburg, which is a great community. And my opinion on the economy and the small businesses is that while it's been hard right now with what we're doing, I think the biggest impact for small businesses is yet to come. I think 2 or 3 months down the road, when some of the benefits that we've been able to get some SBA money, a lot of businesses have been able to get some of that stuff. Some businesses probably had some reserves kept away for a time like this. But 60 days from now, if we're still battling this or the hits start to come, there's a lot of those businesses that are going to be out of the SBA money. They're going to be out of their reserves, and they're going to really be hurting at that point. So the possible major impact for small businesses might be in the future yet.
Good. Well, thank you. I think that's a great suggestion for any of us that have the ability to go out and buy some gift cards from those businesses that we want to continue to see offer their services or products within our community. I think that's great. So thank you for the update from a business community perspective. Next, we're going to go to Pastor Jamie. Thanks for taking time to be with us today. We heard a little bit earlier in the meeting from Two Rivers on some of the guidance that's coming through as it would pertain to churches, and even that's going to apply to funerals and weddings and any of those church setting activities. Any thoughts on that from the Ministerial Association perspective?
Thanks, Nate. We've had, at least from the ELCA and the United Methodist Church, we've had information both from our bishops and our organizing organizations that would encourage us not to hurry into opening up again for meeting in person, particularly in Dawson County, where we're still seeing large numbers of people who are still falling ill and still being treated. So our recommendations is still to continue to err on the side of caution and not open up again too quickly. When we do open up again, my bishop sent out a 4-page document about the kinds of things that would need to be done to try and keep people safe. And I know that similar other organizations are receiving similar kinds of statements. So our intent is to try and keep people safe. And so we work with the funeral home. Tim Strasser is making sure that we fall within those guidelines. And so at the moment, funerals and so forth will continue to be very small. And we will work with just the immediate family, and try to find virtual ways of helping to make that time still supportive from the community, because that is very hard. Weddings tend to be a little bit more complicated because they've got a lot more moving parts in a lot of ways. And so a lot of couples are choosing to actually get married with a very small group and then planning a reception later on when they might be able to get a few more people together. So we are still seeing people get married, but it's looking very different. So, and we'll continue to do that, and we will continue to be careful about how we're complying with the recommendations that we see coming from Two Rivers and so forth. So
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that update. And then need to clarify something, and I may have played a role in muddying the water on this. Pastor Jamie is coming to us from the Methodist Church, and she's representing the Pastoral or Ministerial Association. But where is the food bank located?
sure, the food bank is located at the American Lutheran Church. And if you go in the glass doors on the west side of the church, you will find there, if you're going and bringing items in, you will find a grocery cart, and you can put your items in the grocery cart, and that way we don't have to have physical interaction, which Joyce says bothers her to say that she doesn't want that, but she doesn't right now. And so you can just leave your items there. If you are looking to get one of our boxes, which I have to tell you from operating other food pantries, we have very generous boxes. If you want to get a box, then you need to contact Joyce and call that number, and she'll make arrangements to be there for you. At the moment, we're only seeing about 3 to 4 families per week. We do expect that will go up. I was glad to hear that the school will continue to help feed people through June. But that's a good reminder then for July and August that we will need to have the community step up a little bit more, because the food pantry will be needing more food at that point. But we're very grateful. The community of Gothenburg is very generous, and our pantry is well stocked.
Yep. Thank you, Pastor Jamie. And for anybody that may not know the East and West, I know there's some people in my family that I deal with. The American Lutheran Church is close to the school, and the food pantry entrance would be basically in the alley. So if you drive through the alley, that's the quickest way to see those big glass doors you're talking about on how you get to where the food pantry is located. Does that sound about right?
That is correct.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate your update. So a big thank you to everyone who has taken the time to participate in these meetings. One ask, could you please share some of the information that you've heard today with other people in the community? Whether it's a family member, whether it's coworker, whether it's a friend, please try sharing some of the accurate information that you've received here today. The other thing that I would ask is, please continue to try to look for the positives. There is a lot of good within our community. There is a lot of good things happening. People are choosing to modify behaviors in a positive way in this difficult time. That's not always the message that we get when we go out onto social media or when we go out onto the news. Please be a unique voice in our community of trying to communicate the positive. Another email question that did come in, or a suggestion, was a recommendation for people to understand how many workers it takes to run an election poll. So there's several workers at 2 different locations, and I believe those polls are open from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. So if you happen to see the same people there every year when you go to vote, that may be because you're in the habit of going after work, or you're in the habit of going over your lunch hour, or some of those people work from 8 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. It's going to take probably 5 people at least, and maybe closer to 8, to get this thing across the finish line. So if we could have participants in this meeting today, please reach out and try to volunteer a little bit for the benefit of the community. We'd sure appreciate it. So a big thank you to everyone. Have a great night. We'll see you next Thursday. Thank you.